Welcome, everyone. Today's session is scaling AI across the enterprise. My name is Alina Revelis. I'm the CEO and founder at AI Future Leaders, and we have got very exciting speakers for you this evening. We have got our panel, Scaling AI Across the Enterprise. We will discuss strategy, governance, and that execution. AI is moving very fast. It's moving beyond experiments. When we used to say, well, let's just do more pilots, now everyone is going after that enterprise scale projects that are delivering actual business ROI. So the challenge is important, and we have got very exciting speakers. I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves. Let's start with Victoria, Dr. Victoria Voinovich.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Victoria Ivanovich. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am a global principal for AI-led modernization for HCL Tech, which is a very large Indian headquartered global systems integrator. And I work in the public sector, aerospace, defense, and private equity industries.
Interesting. Now let's go to Dr. Andrea Ruotolo.
Thank you, Alina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this discussion. I'm Andrea Ruotolo. I am the president for Canada for the Global Council for Responsible AI. I work also as a fractional chief AI growth officer, and I'm not yet, but I'm the co-author of an upcoming book called The Adaptive AI Enterprise, which I'm co-authoring with Timothy Stockstill, who has joined the call today. So I'm very excited because many of the things we are going to be talking about today are very much connected to the upcoming book. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. Let's go to Dimant Bundia.
Thanks, Elena, for having me. My name is Dimant. I'm CEO at Work LLM. We are an AI adoption platform. We help mostly SMBs as of now to adopt AI for the day-to-day workflows. And very excited to be here.
It's exciting to have you. We also have Swapna Shiravastava. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm calling in from Oakville, Ontario today. So I am the CEO of a startup called Lean Astro. I have worked at the intersection of process improvement, responsible AI, and AI adoption. And I have been working in the financial services, aerospace, not-for-profit, as well as the public sector for the last 25 years. And this is the kind of work we've done, process first, change adoption, ensure there's change adoption, and then let the tool fit the work. Nice to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, Lena.
Thank you. We also have got Dr. Tushar Hazra. Welcome. If you could introduce
Thank
a few
you,
words.
Elena, for having me. Greetings, everyone. I actually am speaking from Columbia, Maryland, here in the US. I sometimes don't know what time zone I'm in, but that's a different story. But most of the work that I've been doing is primarily in the digital transformation space. Of course, AI becomes, really a key component of it, innovation. And most of the work I'm doing are very similar to what, Victoria and others just mentioned. I'm also working with the US public sector, as well as, many other countries, mostly commercial in other countries, but here in the US, I have a lot of work in the public sector. And obviously on the AI front, I kind of look at all three phases, initially doing the readiness for various companies, really help them create the value that they get from AI, and then ultimately making sure that they realize the value they are proposing to their customers.
Thank you. It's great to have you. So the discussion is all about scaling AI, going from those pilots across the enterprise and achieving that enterprise-wide adoption. So what we know is that companies spend a lot of time on pilots and experiments, and now everything is AI. Everyone is running after AI and AI experiments. And anything from Microsoft Copilot, that's AI, all the way to predictive models, machine learning models. Everyone is like, yes, that's also AI. And it also becomes a challenge. So while many companies have successfully launched pilots and introduced AI tools, but achieving that scale, achieving that business value still remains a challenge. So I'm going to start the panel with the question around what separates that impressive AI pilot from that enterprise capability, and what evidence should leaders maybe require before approving broader deployment?
I love this question, Alina, because my career has been all about scaling, and the latest business unit that I scaled was what became in under 4 years a $1.5 billion business. So it's very interesting to see that actually 95% of enterprise AI pilots are delivering no measurable P&L impact. That's the amount of waste we are currently generating. And unfortunately, about 60% of companies have never moved a single project past the pilot. And I have used this term in previous webinars, but I think it's a good one, which is organizations may go through a death by 1,000 pilots. They are wasting time, resources, confusing their people, and there's the lack of a cohesive plan behind the implementation. And as you very well mentioned at the beginning, there's a lack of clarity on the vision, and there's also lack of governance structures that can scale these seemingly disconnected pilots into becoming what should be the company of the future. So just a few capabilities that I recommend that a pilot should have. So how do you scale a pilot from what it is to enterprise capability? Is you need a baseline documented before you build. You need a named business owner with the P&L results attached, not how many tokens they are using to say we are doing something because we are using tokens and spending a lot of money. You need to connect that business owner with a P&L, and then you need controls running in production, not designed in a document or in a slide. So those are the three things that I recommend corporations should start doing. And I love this question because we are clearly failing at the moment.
And I can add to that as well. Just to add what Andrea was saying, from a process improvement lens, from a business, let's define our business outcomes as an organization at the top level. What are the 3 or 4 things that we need to achieve in this year, in the next year? Let's have those vision sessions, figure out what are those 3 or 4 processes that can benefit from the AI world. Celebrate our our failures, as well as celebrate our successes. The 3 things I recommend is exactly what Andrea said, the baseline. So current state, pain points, what is the customer telling us? What are those KPIs that we're going to measure ourselves against? And then from there, design our future state. And we're bringing people along with this change, the subject matter experts that are participating in the processes. Then we go ahead and implement the AI. AI becomes part of the workflow, of the redesigned workflow, not a add-on after the fact or add-on to an existing process. So 2 cents there.
I'm gonna step in here too, because I think Swapna, you brought up a couple of interesting points. So for me, there's 2 pieces that I think continue this conversation or continues to pull the thread here. One, you talked about having SMEs as part of the process. I also think you have to have a level of trust as part of the process. People are not ready to trust the AI yet. And actually, some of that has to do with we're trying to bring transformed technology into an organization that's not willing to transform. And when we've talked about digital transformation or technological transformation in the past, adoption has been different, right? Because basically we've been introducing calculators, right? And everyone's willing to take a calculator to redo the math. What happens when we bring in a calculator that makes recommendations? All of a sudden, that trust factor goes way down. And we're not designing organizations such that agents and human employees are all part of the talent pipeline, that outcome from the agents is considered at the same level as outcome from humans, that humans are in the places where humans need to be doing human things, right? Where we need strategy, where we need humanity, right? That a machine can't do the work. And so helping people see their place in an AI native organization helps with the adoption.
I would like to add just one more thing. Like I 100% agree with Swapna, Andrea, and Victoria. When we do pilot, right? A pilot proves that technology works or the AI can do something, but it doesn't prove that the organization can rely on it. And typically, private works in a very controlled environment with a limited set of data, but enterprise capability is different. Enterprise capability means that outcome holds up when hundreds and probably thousands of users use it for their own use cases. So, I mean, I would agree with what other people said about what they want to see, and I would just like couple of other things. I would like to add a couple of other things. One is the failure analysis. So a documented failure analysis where we know right when the AI fails, how it fails, and what are the consequences. We should have it before a wider rollout. And one more thing I want to add is the ownership. So who is responsible not just for the launch, but after the launch as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Devon,
all of you
especially
are making really good points. I wanted to add one or two things here. One, I have always been a big believer of measurement. You need to have some metrics, and it should start early. I know the rate in which we are adopting AI is really faster than many other technology innovations we have seen, but it actually is more focused on business than anything else. So as I was telling in the early, introduction, that I work with people for the readiness, then into getting into value creation, and then finally in value realization. I always focus on creating some metrics that everybody in the organization can live with. And once we agree upon certain things, you follow that and make sure that, what Swapna was saying about measurement, what Victoria has noticed in the technology and digital transformation, things that Andrea was looking at, or, Dhimant, you mentioned, all of them actually come together because at the end of the day, it's really focusing on what are we delivering to the business. And if AI is going to do something that is really important and impacting the business, then only it will see the path forward, even to get to the scaling. And that's where the whole thing that comes in about the governance. And that also starts early. So I think all of us really have very similar experience. I find that it's really, really important that companies or organizations really look into their business needs and requirements very carefully before jumping right in that, oh, I'm going to do AI. And then pilots and all the other things will make sense if we know what are we really driving for. Thank you.
Yeah, those are very good points. And before approving that expansion from pilots to that enterprise scale solution, many leaders are requiring now measurable KPIs, because if something that works in a pilot, which often is a sandbox or in a small experiment, that doesn't mean it's going to scale or get adopted necessarily. So many are requiring those measurable baselines that evidence across different users, business conditions, across your data. And there are many studies that were done recently, one by McKinsey, saying that those that are high performance, the ones that are succeeding with AI, those companies succeeding, they are the ones that have strongest ownership and accountability. They are the ones that are having those guardrails, that governance in place, and they treat this as a process, not just as technology. They focus on the change management. So my second question actually is more about, let's discuss where should accountability lie? Where should, and who is accountable? Let's say AI is making mistakes. And how should responsibility be divided among those business owners, technology teams, data teams, legal departments? We have risk, we have compliance. Many teams are now touching this AI project or this ecosystem.
Okay, I'll start this one. So, honestly, the most common failures I've seen is not the wrong person being accountable, but there is no one being accountable. Like when a use case is automated, there are five different departments touch them, and every head of that department quietly assumes that someone else is watching that closely. And when something goes wrong, they all blame each other, right? So I would argue that this is a bigger risk than the technical failure. And according to me, the accountability has to sit with the business owner, not with the IT, not with the central AI team. And that probably not the very popular answer here, but I have a strong opinion here, right? According to me, whoever owns the outcome, the PNL, the customer experience, or any processes, this person has to be the one accountable for AI touching that processes or the business outcome. And that does not mean that technology and risk sit on the sidelines. So, according to me, there are three important owners here. One is the technology and data team, but their main ownership lies with the enablement of the AI with respective to business workflow. Legal risk or compliance team, and their ownership lies with the providing the guardrails. They define what's permissible and where the lines are. And the main business owner for that respective use case defines that when to go live, what part of their workflow will touch by AI, and when we are ready to properly transform it through AI. Yeah.
I think you
That's
have
go ahead, Victoria, go ahead.
I just think you have a lot of really good points, Demont. I think one of the other things that I've found to be very true is somehow we think we flip the switch between pilot and scale. Scale's not this behemoth of a step that you take after pilot, and we sometimes forget about change management. The AI era is change management on steroids. It really is. And you really have to understand that employees will go through all 7 phases of the change curve. And if you just flip the switch and say, okay, this is active, everybody use it, even if you have a business owner who owns the use case, again, we have to take into account the human adoption piece of this. And so one of the things that I think is really valuable in scaling is just go back to baseline change management. Go with the willing first. Find the 2 or 3 or 5 teams that are willing to take a risk on this and go there. Because as in any change project, you're going to have people who jump on the train early and people who are stuck on the platform, and they have a choice either to get on the train as it's pulling from the station or stay on the platform. And you don't want those people being the ones finding all the bugs as you're scaling, because there's only so many use cases you can run in pilot. You want the people who are ready for change to step into that first change space. I really recommend with organizations that they build an AI transformation center of excellence. And it doesn't have to be this huge, massive overhead organization. Just has to be somebody who's conducting the orchestra, right? One of the best keynotes presentations I ever attended in my life was the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic. And he said something that stuck with me that I'll never forget. He says, the conductor of the orchestra is the only instrumentalist who never plays a note but is completely responsible for the music. So when I think about responsibility, I think about that conductor. That person may not come from a particular business unit, it may not come from a particular line of business or be the business owner, but that conductor is making sure that all the business owners are aware of the AI pilots that are coming out of pilot, ready to be scaled, building the change management process, owning that change management transformation all the way through end to end. Does that mean that person takes all the bullets when everything fails? Not sure about that. I don't necessarily agree with that. But that transformation office has every member of the organization, every leader in the organization as a stakeholder. And then they become the clearinghouse for what's ready, when, and how, and why.
I love it.
So I really I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights. So go where the pack is going, go where things are going, right? Where are things going? Well, we are going to change dramatically the way that we work. We will have an AI operating system running the operations of a corporation, where we are going to have reposition humans in the system as humans in the loop, on the loop, or in command, depending on the risk of the decision making and the level of accountability that they need to have. So, keeping that in mind, that when you wake up and turn on your computer, the agents and AI will have already made 1,000 decisions before you woke up, right? The question is, how can we how can we ensure that the decisions we are making today are aligning the organization towards the reality that's coming, that's inevitable? So what we have right now, unfortunately, is that about 70% of the CEOs call themselves the primary AI decision maker. But I believe they are confusing sponsorship with accountability. Sponsorship is not accountability. It sits with the business owner of the process, because that's where the outcome lands, like Dimant mentioned before. So the mindset we need to change here, and connected back to what Virginia was talking about, change management, is that an org chart is not going to tell you who authorized what your AI did yesterday. Authority has to travel with the work. Who delegated it, what the delegate may do, and who can stop it at 2 a.m. That's how we are going to avoid a lot of the headaches as we are implementing this technology.
And I can, oh, go ahead,
Go
Tushar. Go
ahead,
ahead. No,
Sabna,
no,
you
go
go.
ahead. Go ahead.
So I
Okay.
think I will just point out that, in reality, CEO is responsible for everything that goes on in a company. If anybody gets their head chopped off in the beginning, if something goes wrong with their financials, the CEO is the one who's going to get the blame. So while that is true, you also have to understand that only one CEO cannot be the head of everything. So obviously, what I see in most cases, the CEOs will delegate their responsibilities and accountabilities for the AI to people who are truly in charge of making that happen. In most cases, what I see, companies really first look into their business impact. What exactly AI going to do for the business? And in most companies, the CEO would hand it over to his direct reports, who are responsible for various business units or divisions or whatever way they call their organizations. Once that gets done, the very first thing that really has to happen is really looking into what impact AI is going to bring to that business. And you also have to look at the cross section of different organizations that will work together. Once you have that, then they could come up with the priorities, which one should go first, which one should come next, and so on. And I actually find many companies, they really start early creating what I call RACI matrix. It's almost like any other place, responsibility, accountability, consulting, information, or inform, that kind of approach. What that does, it lays out the guardrails that Andrea was talking about and Victoria was also mentioning. And I think what that does, it also allows everybody to know where they are, what their role is in the AI adoption, and then finally taking it to the execution, like Alina was talking in the beginning, that execution is kind of something that has to be successful. If that is not successful, if it's not measured, if it doesn't produce any outcome that is really important for the company to achieve their goals, then AI is not going to be successful. And I think it's not yet another signing technology tool. It's something that comes from the business for the business, and it has to be the technology's responsibility to empower the business with the AI that's going to bring value to the overall company.
And I can add to that too. So 100% agree on the business side. There's a slight variation I'll take on that lens is adhering to regulation, especially in large financial institutions or regulated institutions. So in the Canadian banking sector, we have OSFI, right? This is the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. They are the ones who regulate the financial systems in Canada. And there is a heavy oversight from that regulatory body, and there's many more like that, but OSFI is one that comes to mind. So there is an accountability piece that going back to Victoria's point around that central function. So that central function, in my mind, should be empowered to make sure that that organization is adhering to the oversight bodies that regulate that organization. And that cannot lie with the individual business users or the business use case, absolutely. But the overall compliance piece is another set of accountability. And another set of accountability, I'm not a technology person, but the bias, the drift of those models, what is the data the model is being trained on? Right? There are data scientists, machine learning specialists, and Alina, you would be best suited to speak to this one. But there's an accountability on that piece as well, the procurement side. There's regulations that when you bring in a vendor, are they training their models on your organization's data? A business person cannot be accountable for that necessarily. So that kind of goes back to Victoria's point of that centralized function, who is the guru potentially, or a set of gurus in the spaces that don't neatly fit into the business use case model. Thank you.
These are some excellent points where we are discussing who is accountable, who basically takes that and ownership and accountability. They are for sure different. They are definitely different. Now, I actually read a couple studies recently. There was one by Deloitte recently, they said that 70%, just over 70%, report having 5 or more C-suite technology leaders, illustrating how easily you can plug in AI, but also how decision rights can become fragmented. So that was a point that was made. And there was another study saying how we have to, I believe it was Gartner, that in the next 12 months, technology leaders have to adapt and change their operating models. We have to not just have our strategy separately, our AI separately. Now you're thinking about those AI operating models and how you are operating, how you're scaling, and how you are moving along. Some are centralizing it, and others are working in a federated model and democratizing AI because it's getting easier, right? It's getting very easy now to build agentic systems, and many are thinking into the next year or two, how can we scale our AI in our with our employees, with our customers, and where does this lie? So that scalable AI operating model, and that's basically let's discuss that a bit. How do we scale and how do we stand up those AI operating models? What does it actually look like in practice? And I know, Victoria, you work with customers, Tushar, Demand, Swapna, Andrea, you all have got your perspective on this. And what are the capabilities that we need for that operating model, and where should it live in the enterprise? Maybe Swapna, if you want to
Yeah,
comment.
absolutely. So just building on what we talked about before, right? So so what I'm seeing more is the centralization of those core functions that cannot live in the individual business units. That piece of it is the center of excellence, if you like. And then you've got the business units that have the independence to run with the use cases, but also choose their vendors if they want to, as long as the vendors adhere to the regulations and don't put that organization offside with the regulatory bodies. So there are checks and balances the COE could have things like, we talked about the change management, so training, some standardized practices, perhaps. What are the risks that we need to think about when it comes to AI or when you're evaluating the vendor? What are also the roles and responsibilities that people are not clear, maybe loosely define those roles and responsibilities as accountabilities that we're talking about. And then, have the business units start there. One of the things that has worked in the past is also do some of those test and learns and look at those test and learns and build a playbook that then people can repeat and recycle. And of course, customize potentially a little bit to their particular business units.
I love all that, Swapna. And I think I want to add that Alina and I have had multiple conversations, like just one-on-one chats and catch-up sessions where we've talked about operating model, because this is a space that I lean into very, very heavily. And I'll tell you why. Right now, with AI, if anybody can build a Lamborghini and then they put it onto a racetrack that's an old country road, so you have these high performance tires, a high performance engine, and you're running it down a country road full of potholes and gravel and rocks and stones, you're not going to get what you want out of the car that you built. And in the same way, if you don't have the right mechanics, right? Or the right race car driver, what does this high performance car get you, right? So my manager is Italian, and we had a conversation, and we were with a client, and I said, "Yep, you just built a Lamborghini, and my boss over here would love to drive your Lamborghini. She's not trained to drive a Lamborghini, but sure, she'll take it out for a test spin, and who knows what it's going to look like when it comes back, right?" So the operating model is so pivotal because it is the piece that makes this all come together. And the operating model has so many pillars. So there's this whole pillar about governance, and there's a pillar about platforms. What are the platforms that you're going to use? How are you going to orchestrate this? Again, you've got to have somebody who's conducting this. They've got to know what instruments are on the field. There's a whole piece about policy, right? Governance and policy, I look as two separate things. Governance is how do you operate from day to day. Policy is what are the overarching responsible AI, all of that piece to it. There is talent, and talent is a very different world now. It's not just humans, it's humans and agents. Agents are some of your talent, and you have to consider that in the model. And so when you put all of this together, also that whoever's writing these agents, they're not typical software developers, right? My wonderful comp sci degree from Penn State that I got back when I was 4 because I was a child prodigy, it showed I had 30 programming languages that I graduated with. Nobody cares about that anymore. Nobody cares that I know how to write an algorithm. Nobody cares that I know how to design code, right? The AI is taking care of that. My job now as an AI engineer is a very different job. It is really more of an SRE, PRE kind of function. And organizations haven't made that shift yet. I work with companies, they say, okay, well, I'm a front end developer and I'm a back end developer. No, you're an AI developer. If you use AI well, doesn't matter whether you're developing the front end or the back end, you can do either. So it's really about changing mindset and then building this AI native organization through a structured operating model.
So, in this book that I mentioned, I wanted to bring in my own personal experience on how to get this done. I've done it 5 times in my career, but then I'm like, no, I'm missing things. So I'm going to interview people, and I interviewed more than 100 people, but I didn't want them to be from one layer of the organization. I wanted them to be from all parts of the organization to give me their perspective. So I got the most diverse group of people that I could find and ask them these questions about what are we going to centralize, what should we decentralize, what should be hybrid. And interestingly enough, we all agreed, which I wasn't expecting that outcome, that we all agreed. And basically, what we agreed is that we need to centralize for this new system that we are building. We need to centralize the infrastructure, models, basically this new identity of the company, the risk policy, the guardrails. So all that nervous system on how your company operates needs to be centralized. But you want to decentralize innovation. You want to decentralize use case selection. You want to decentralize workflow design. So that's where you give people freedom and autonomy because they have the experience, they are the people with boots on the ground, and they have again, the experience to select what is that they need to implement. And then we agreed we need to do in a hybrid way is data. So basically, you are sharing business units, basically own meaning, and then the center owns the plumbing and the standards. And that is what people from all over the world, again, multiple organizations, different locations in the organization that have experience now in building and implementing this AI operating system, we all agreed we need to centralize, decentralize, and what needs to be hybrid.
So I agree with everyone, and I just would like to name it as a hub and spoke model. It's exactly the same what everyone described, where hub is the central layer that governs the many decisions about AI, model, vendor relationship, security, governance, and spoke will be the business unit that will decide which use cases to be automated and prioritization for that.
Now, governance. Many companies I see are getting into standing up AI governance committees. And those tend to be humans, a lot of humans across the enterprise, risk, compliance, IT, InfoSec, cyber, coming together and reviewing. And the problem is the amount of AI is now to such a level that those human governing bodies are just not able to keep up. Also, another challenge tends to be shadow AI. It's very hard to control. And you have got now AI everywhere, from vendors to using AI to tools you are now purchasing. Just about any product out there has got AI in it, and it's very difficult to govern. Plus, you have got employees potentially building agents. You might have dedicated teams in the company building agentic systems. You might have your IT teams, data science teams building agentic capabilities and systems and deploying. So that human network becomes a bit of that bottleneck. But governance controls are still needed. You have to have that oversight. We cannot just approve anything out there, right? So governance, how do you get over that approval bottleneck? And what have you seen in practice? And how can we accelerate governance? I actually just came back from a conference in Las Vegas, AI4, and what I've noticed, there were thousands, I think about 1,000 vendors and booths. Victoria, you were one of them actually. And this year, compared to previous years, it was all about the governance and those controls. A lot of companies are now around managing and governing AI and agentic systems and putting that admin layer, how should I say, on it. So let's talk a bit about the governance and how can we get around that bottleneck. If anyone wants to jump on that one.
I'm going to start, and I'm only going to say a couple things because I've talked a lot and I want to hear what everybody else has to say. But I think the most important thing is start with the governance built in at the pilot stage. I think one of the reasons that things are getting backed up is because pilots have been very freewheeling and without any governance or policy to manage them. And then we say, oh, that was really great. Let's scale it. And now you have to reverse engineer it and put the governance back into it. So if you can have the operating model set up first so that governance becomes part of the pilot stage or the proof of concept stage, you start to take away the need for excessive governance on the back end when you're trying to scale.
I agree with Victoria, and what I would add to that is, yes, governance, it needs to be coded and embedded into that seed, that initial pilot, but also what needs to be integrated into that DNA of the pilot is the change management process. Because people now need to learn how to operate under these new rules of the system. So that's what I would like to add. And I will stop talking because I also want to hear from others.
Demant, you're the CEO of Work LLM. Tell us a bit how you're approaching that.
Sure. So what I've seen, observed so far in the organization is like governance become bottlenecks because people treat that as a checkpoint or a gate. Every use case need to pass through this governance, whether it's a high risk or a low risk use case, and they all wait in the same queue. So my take for the governance is it should not be treated as a checklist or a gate, but it should be treated as an infrastructure that you build once and reuse multiple times. So speed comes from not relitigating the same question over and over. And there are three ways I would actually make this work in practice. The first I want to talk about is risk filtering. So we should identify like what are the use cases that are high priority and what are the use cases that are low priority. And we should treat the governance different way for different use cases. The second one is building some reusable controls. And what I mean by that is the hub team we talked about in the previous question that should work on approving, that should work on some of the infrastructure, and that should have a list of approved model list, pre-cleared data sources, standard prompt patterns, approved vendor contracts. So any team that want to adopt AI can start using it from the pre-vetted list instead of building something or start from the scratch. And that will automatically speed up a lot of the processes. And the last thing is like building some predefined escalation paths. So many time bottleneck occurs because people don't know who to ask for. So if you have a predefined path, like low risk tiers would be approved by this team and the total SLA is, let's say, 1 week, just an example, then the approval process will be much faster and it will speed up the process a lot.
We also have Swapna. I would love to hear your perspective on this as the founder of Lean Astro. You actually lead a company around that AI education, that advisory, the solutioning piece, and you work with many companies. And I'm sure you also come across this quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, my last engagement was with one of Canada's largest bank, exactly on this question. So we actually approached it very much the way Demant and Andrea and Victoria spoke about. So when I started in that particular role, or that project, um, everything was going through the exact same criteria of checking, hey, can this pass? Can this not pass? The project, then what we looked at is, what are those questions we need to be asking of the AI solution? And what is it built on? What's the business problem it's solving? What is the data it's using? Is it in-house built? Is it a vendor built? Based on that, we did a lot of analysis from a regulator standpoint, from an industry standpoint, and then we built what we call as a triaging system. And we actually automated the lowest of the lowest risk AI type solutions are automatically pre-approved from a risk standpoint, that they don't have to go through the same rigor as other ones. Now, that was a very small, tiny list, mind you, but then we had additional risk, and based on basically low, medium, high risks, we said, okay, these are the standard processes that it's going to go through from an approval standpoint. And the more complex it is, the more data it's using, blah, blah, blah. And there's also PII, right? The personal identification. If this personal identification type data, so type of data was a big part of that governance conversation too, and the type of data and what the vendors were using as well, always at in-house build. So absolutely, and that actually what it did is it freed up the very small set of resources that could actually look at these solutions to really hone in, focus on those medium and high risk type solutions. And that took about 9 months to put in, but I think it was a well worth exercise.
I actually think that these are very relevant points. Having that governance maybe already in that pilot stage and early on, and not as an afterthought. And as we are wrapping up this panel this evening, I actually want to ask every single one of our panel speakers this evening a question. In just a few words, if an executive team could make only one investment right now, or in the next 90 days, to improve its ability to scale AI responsibly in a governed and safe way, what should it be and why? What could it be? What do you think?
So my strong suggestion is, so depending on the state of digital transformation of your corporation, it would be different. Your AI zones, or of where do you want to focus, and depending on the goals you want to achieve as a corporation. So I don't think it matters as much what they need to implement, but how they should implement it. Implement it having in mind implementing this AI operating system with the DNA of your future corporation and change management process there. Invest in this seed 30% in the technology and 70% in the change management process, so that you will ensure that each seed that you plant, it's going to become part of your future corporation. So that would be my suggestion. Yes, of all the things you can do, pick the ones that are going to help you achieve your goals. There will be low-hanging fruits, and there's a process to identify what would that be. But the how, and focusing on your people and ensuring that they have a clear view on what's the company you want to build in the future, so that they don't resist the technology itself because they fear it. I think it's the most important success factor in the end.
I'm gonna double down on that. If I was in advising a CEO team or a C-suite team what to do, I would say invest in an operating model assessment and gap analysis so that you can close out those governance pieces before you try to scale anything and build that governance right into the model from the beginning.
Good point.
For me, I would focus on setting up the seed right and setting up the basic settings right. So I would stick to my last answer that, setting up the risk tiers, reusable controls and ownership. So actually we can enable it, very with high speed and proper way when we actually have it. So like that's what I focus on the first stage in the first 90 days.
Yeah, Swapna?
I can go next. Yeah. So I agree with everything. In addition, what I'm also thinking of, how does the company stay competitive in the marketplace? So we think of agents as automation and productivity, very important, but we also have a unique opportunity to build brand new products and services through augmentation and diversification. So we have an opportunity here, once all of the foundation has been laid, as we just talked about, is to start thinking about how can we use AI to differentiate ourselves as a company.
In my experience, what I have found that the first 90 days really goes fast in understanding the risk factors, knowing what could become sustainable, AI initiative, something that would bring value, make the company competitive, but at the same time, competition is not once and done. It's something that stays along with the company. So most of the time, the C-suites that I'm working with, which is primarily all over the globe, I find that the priorities for the risk factors, what needs to be identified, and then again, I think Dhimant was talking about the tiers. Risk tiers is very identical. That has to be something that also needs to be looked at. 90 days is not a whole lot of time, although it should produce something which I call quick wins. It has to provide the ability for rest of the organization to believe that what we're trying to set out and do is going to impact our living rest of our life inside the company. And I think that's what I find most of the time companies really do struggle with without putting that guardrails in place before they get into one single initiative.
So this was a very good discussion this evening. I would like to thank our audience for joining us, as well as our speakers. We are going to have this event on YouTube, and we will do a recap on LinkedIn as well. If you want to join us as a speaker, you can check us out. Take a look at our website. You can join us in the audience or as a speaker for our upcoming events. I do want to thank everyone. Do review our website, aifutureleaders.com. And thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a good evening, everyone.